In London, a flat conversion can look planning ready on paper and still run into trouble over one issue: parking overspill. If neighbors or officers think your scheme will push extra cars onto already stressed streets, that objection can put a valuable project at risk. The good news is that solid transport evidence can answer it. Councils look hard at flat conversions because even small schemes add up. A few extra units on one street may not sound dramatic, but repeated across a borough, the parking impact can become very real. They are also balancing housing delivery against local street conditions. That means checking whether a proposal supports the London plan's push for sustainable travel rather than increasing car dependence. Officers will often view parking, walking, cycling, refuse access, and servicing as part of the same picture. In other words, this is about how the site functions day to day, not just how many spaces fit on a drawing. So when a conversion is assessed, healthy streets and public transport accessibility are not background issues. They help shape what level of parking the council is likely to accept. PTAL stands for Public Transport Accessibility Level. Put simply, it is a way of measuring how easy it is to reach public transport from a site. Transport for London calculates it by looking at nearby stations and bus stops, how often services run, and the walk time needed to reach them. The scale runs from 0, which means very poor access, up to 6B, which means excellent access. The higher the rating, the stronger the policy case for lower parking provision. That matters because planners do not judge every site the same way. A conversion near strong public transport is expected to rely less on private cars than one in a weaker location. So PTAL is not just a map label. It is one of the starting points for deciding whether your proposed parking level looks reasonable before the wider evidence is reviewed. In lower PTAL areas, policy alone rarely settles the parking question. If officers think residents may own cars, they often want local survey evidence. A common approach follows the Lambeth methodology, which tests how much spare on-street capacity actually exists around the site, rather than relying on assumptions. Typically, that means surveying within about 200 meters of the development and recording parking demand during overnight periods when residential stress is most visible. The key output is parking stress. That is the proportion of legal spaces already occupied at the survey time. If stress is above 85%, many councils treat the street as effectively full. If it is below that level, your evidence may show there is still capacity to absorb limited demand from the scheme. This is where the transport statement earns its value. It pulls the site context, PTAL rating, and parking survey findings into one planning narrative. First, it explains how accessible the site is without a car. Then it shows what parking conditions actually look like on surrounding streets. From there, the report can address the main objection directly. Will the scheme create harmful overspill, or does the evidence show the local network can cope? A well-prepared statement also goes wider than parking. It can cover emergency access, refuse collection, cycle parking, servicing, and whether the layout works safely in practice. That is what makes the document defensible. It does not just claim the scheme is acceptable. It shows why with evidence that planning officers can test. A good example comes from South London. The scheme was a Victorian property proposed for conversion into 4 flats in an area with a PTAL of 2. That low PTAL rating immediately raised concern. The council's question was straightforward. Would future residents add pressure to nearby on-street parking? The response was not to argue in the abstract. It was to analyze the location properly, survey local parking demand, and test the street network around the site. That evidence showed there was spare capacity within the surrounding area, which helped answer the overspill concern with something far stronger than a general assumption. The result was planning approval, and crucially, approval without a car-free restriction. That is the value of getting the transport case right when risk is highest. For developers, the lesson is simple. A low accessibility site is not automatically unviable. What matters is whether your evidence is detailed, local, and credible enough to withstand scrutiny. So the key takeaway is not to accept parking objections at face value. Test them against the actual conditions around your site. Bring in transport input early, especially if PTAL is low or local streets already feel sensitive. Early evidence gives your design and planning strategy much stronger footing. And when your reporting is robust, you reduce planning risk. You give officers a practical basis to support the scheme instead of relying on worst-case assumptions. If you're preparing a flat conversion in London and need clear transport advice fast, ML Traffic Engineers can help you build a stronger planning case. From PTAL reviews and Lambeth-style parking surveys to transport statements and wider planning support, the team can move quickly and focus on the evidence councils want to see. Get in touch with ML Traffic Engineers to discuss your site, your timeline, and the transport strategy that can help unlock approval.